Now, welcome to today's lesson, that is science lesson standard 8, where first of all I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Faraj, Mr. Faraj from SUMEYA, and today we are going to cover a subtopic on reproduction in human beings under the subtopic fetal development. Now, during our last topic discussion, you talked about fertilization, where you said the definition of fertilization and what happened during fertilization. You talked of the sperm and uniting with the ovum so that it can form what we call a zygote. Now, during the last discussion also, you talked about what happened when there is successful fertilization, where the teacher talked about the union of the sperm uniting with the ovum to form a zygote. Now, when you have a successful fertilization, you'll have the formation of the zygote. Thereafter, the zygote moves down to the uterus. When we have fertilization, that is sperm plus ovum, it forms a zygote. Thereafter, the zygote moves down to the uterus. When it moves down to the uterus, it attaches itself. It attaches itself to the uterine wall, to the uterus wall. Now, the process by which the zygote attaches itself to the uterus wall, it is what we call implantation. Implantation is the process by which zygote attaches itself to the uterus wall. Now, after understanding how implantation occurs during the last lesson, we are moving direct to the fetal development. After implantation, the embryo now develops. Now, after implantation, now what is the zygote? Zygote is now called embryo. After implantation, the zygote is now called embryo. Now, the embryo is now joined to the it's now united or joined to the uterus wall by the formation of a disc, by the formation of a disc-shaped organ known as the placenta. After implantation, the zygote is now called embryo, and now the embryo is now attached and forms what we call a disc-shaped organ known as the placenta. The placenta, this one joins the embryo to the mother. It joins placenta, joins the embryo to the mother. Now, after this, the placenta forming uniting, we hold the embryo now joins to the placenta by what we call the umbilical cord. The embryo join the placenta by the umbilical cord. Now, the umbilical cord, this is the umbilical cord is now The umbilical cord is now the joining between the mother, that is, when you have such a diagram, let's assume this is the female sex, the female part. I'm just making a rough diagram just to illustrate how the placenta and the embryo are united to the fetus or the embryo. Now we have talked about the placenta. Now this is what we call the placenta, which is now joining the embryo to the mother. This is now the uterine, the reproductive sex of the male, the female, sorry. Now this is the placenta. This is now the umbilical cord. Umbilical cord. And this is now the placenta. Now between the embryo and the placenta, we have what we call now the umbilical cord. We have what we call the umbilical cord. Now after that, we talk about the fetus being surrounded by a liquid, being surrounded, the fetus, sorry, of the fetus. That is now after what happened after 6 months, 6 weeks. After 6 weeks, this embryo develops most of the important parts. The embryo develops most of the important parts. These important parts, they include the eyes, they include the ears, the lips, we talk of the feet, etc. Now, immediately after 6 weeks, the embryo develops most of the important parts, and these important parts may include the eyes, ears, lips, and others. Now also after 8 weeks, now the embryo is not called embryo again, but now it develops to become now a fetus. It is now called a fetus. That is after 8 weeks. And now after 8 weeks, we say the embryo is now called fetus, and now fetus, we say fetus is now surrounded. It is surrounded. The fetus is surrounded with a sac called the amnion. That's the amnion sac. The amnion sac. And inside the amnion sac, we have what we call the amniotic fluid. We have a fluid called amniotic fluid. Amniotic fluid. Moving forward, we'll talk about the importance of the placenta, the importance of the umbilical cord. We'll also discuss the importance of the amniotic fluid to the development of the baby or the fetus. Now, after this happens, now you will get to understand how does the fetus develops and what happened to the placenta when the development is taking place. How does the fetus get food? How does the fetus get oxygen? How does the fetus remove the waste products? You know, most of you may get somebody asking you, how is the food from the mother gets to the fetus? Or how can somebody develop without feeding and etc.? Now the fetus gets food. But now before I get to that, let me give you a summary of the development of this baby. Let me give you a summary of the process of development. First, we said we have a unity, that is sperm plus ovum, which gave us zygote. Thereafter, we say the zygote, the zygote grows to embryo. Thereafter, we said from the embryo, we said the embryo develops or grows. The embryo develops or grows to a fetus. It develops to a fetus. Now, after the development of the fetus, now the fetus develops to a full-grown baby. The fetus develops or grows. Let me use grows to a baby, that is a full-grown baby. Now, first we say that is sperm plus ovum, that is fertilization, we get zygote. Then zygote grows to an embryo, then the embryo grows to a fetus, then the fetus develops or grows to a full-grown baby. Now let's look very fast to the functions of the placenta. Functions of the placenta. Function of the placenta. Now we said, from the diagram there, we said the placenta joins the baby to the mother, and between the placenta and the baby, that is the fetus, we have the umbilical cord, and this is now the placenta. Now between the placenta and the baby, we have the umbilical cord. Now what is the function of the placenta to the fetus or to the mother? Number one, we say the placenta, it helps in exchange of carbon dioxide. Exchange of carbon dioxide. That is exchange of carbon dioxide. It cannot be from the mother, but it's exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen. Exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen, that is between mother and a fetus. When you say exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen between mother and fetus, that means we are talking about carbon dioxide getting outside of the baby to the mother, and oxygen getting from the mother to the baby, because a baby needs oxygen for growth and also development. And also we know carbon dioxide is a waste product. Now it is from the baby to the mother. Number two, function number two, we say it's for supply of food. Supply of food from mother to the fetus. A baby needs food for growth, so it has to be supplied with food. Now the food is get out of the mother to the placenta, then the baby gets that food from the placenta, that is for growth and development. Then another function, it is for facilitate transfer of waste products. Facilitate, that is to transfer, that is transfer, let me just write it shortly, that is transfer of waste products. Now a baby produces waste products, but now those waste products cannot stay in the uterus, but now they have to be transferred to the mother, or to the mother's blood, to the mother's blood. The waste products that are produced from the fetus, they are transported or transferred to the mother through the placenta. Then the mother gets rid of them by the process of excretion. Now, after the waste products have been transferred to the mother, now the baby continues to grow. As a human being, you have to produce waste, you have to grow, you have to eat, you have to exchange, you have to breathe. So here we talk of breathing, that is exchange of gases. You talk of food, that is food from the mother. We have to give out waste products, that is now the transfer of waste products from the fetus. Next, the function, we talk of production of hormones. Production of hormones. Now, the mother produces hormones. These hormones, they help to keep the pregnancy. The hormones maintain pregnancy. For the pregnancy of a mother to be retained or to be maintained, there is production of hormones. And these hormones, they are not produced with anything else, but they are produced with the placenta. Now, these are the main 4 functions of the placenta. Number 1, exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen. Number 2, we have the supply of food from the mother to the fetus. We have the transfer of waste or waste products from the fetus to the mother's blood. Then we have the production of hormones. The hormones, we say the main function of the hormones produced is for maintaining of the pregnancy. Very fast, we are going to look about the functions of the umbilical cord. We said we look for the function of the placenta, the umbilical cord, and the amniotic fluid. So we move to functions of umbilical cord. Now, the umbilical cord has only one major function, and the major function, because it joins the placenta to the fetus, because it is the joining point of the fetus. This is the fetus, and this is the umbilical cord, and this is the umbilical cord, and this is the fetus, and this is now the placenta. Now, because the umbilical cord joins the fetus and the placenta, the main function of this is just for the passage. It allows passage. It allows passage of number 1, carbon dioxide. Number 2, oxygen. Number 3, we talk of waste products. Number 4, we talk of food. Now, we said the placenta exchange of carbon dioxide, oxygen. We talked of the supply of food. We talked of transfer of waste products. Now, these main 3 functions of the placenta, they cannot be successful if we don't have the umbilical cord, because the umbilical cord is the one that now transferred the food from the placenta to the fetus, and again it transfers the waste product from the fetus to the placenta, then they are transferred to the mother. Now, the main function of the umbilical cord is now to allow passage, of oxygen, food, and the waste products. The waste products, example, the carbon dioxide, and we have others that are produced from the fetus. Then, today we are going to talk the last part of today, we are going to talk about the function of the amniotic fluid. Functions of amniotic fluid. Amniotic fluid. The function of the amniotic fluid, very fast. Number one, we talk about it acts as a shock absorber. Shock absorber. It acts as a shock absorber. Number two, we talk of it also keeps the fetus warm. Keeps the fetus warm. Keeps the fetus warm. Then number three, we talk of it prevents the fetus from drying. Prevents the fetus from drying. Then lastly, the last function is to lubricate the fetus for easier movement. Lubricates the fetus for easier movement. Now those are the main three functions of the amniotic fluid. Now in summary, we have talked about the development of the baby, that is from the zygote, embryo, and fetus, then full-blown baby. We have talked about the placenta, the function of the placenta. We have talked about the umbilical cord, the function of the umbilical cord. We have talked lastly the function of the amniotic fluid. Now thank you very much. Keep